Welcome back to the Jake Underwood Show right here, AM 1420, The Answer, and I'm honored to bring this next guest on. I've worked for him. I've called him Sir. I've called him Bobby, and now I get to call him Secretary Kennedy. Sir, thank you for making time for us today, and welcome back to Cleveland.
Jake, it's so good to be back with you. We were just talking before the show that I was with you on that campaign the first time you ever flew on an airplane and the first time you ever saw the ocean.
That's right.
I was stunned by your parochial insularity.
You're going to make me cry, Bobby. What are you doing to me? I appreciate that so much, man. I really, man, I love you so much. I really do, and I'm so thankful for you. But what
is mutual.
Well, welcome back to Cleveland, and what's on your agenda? What are you doing while you're in town?
We're going to the City Club tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to. I spent the day today at Chef's Garden, which is out in Milan, Ohio, and it was just the most magical event. It's an extraordinary vegetable farm that produces some of the best vegetables in the world, and they've learned to do it without using chemicals, and they're supplying the best restaurants in the world. But the food tasted better than anything that I've ever tasted in my life. It was really an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, it's I love the healthyfood.gov, realfood.gov, and we've talked about it on the show. And you flip the pyramid, and I mean, it's if people start eating that way, they're going to realize food actually it tastes very good if you eat the right kind. And that's why
real food tastes good, and it's medicine too. It heals you.
That's right. So let me ask you, when it comes to Make America Healthy Again, I'm wearing my shirt right now. That was the agenda that even before it was Make America Healthy Again, you were running on that. That was when you talked about a lot of different things when you ran for president, but Make America Healthy Again is the best way to sum it up. And you've talked about chronic disease. What do you believe is the biggest single driver? And what has Washington ignored when it comes to chronic disease?
Well, Washington was the cause of it because the FDA had been captured by the food industry, and it was lying to the American public. It was telling us not to eat protein, and that it was okay to eat ultra-processed food and highly refined carbohydrates. That's now 70%. Those are poisons, and they're now 70% of the calorie intake for the average American, and it just poisoned us. We went from being the healthiest country in the world to the sickest, and we literally have the highest chronic disease burden on earth. Where 77% of our kids cannot qualify for military service, and the obesity rates have gone from 2 or 3% in the 1950s. 5% when my uncle was president to 20% today in our children. My uncle was so alarmed that it was 5% because the Europeans were around 2%. And he thought Americans are getting stuff. Well, now it's 20%. And he saw it as a national security issue, which not only because these kids are not healthy enough to join the military, but it's also costing us $4.3 trillion. In fact, 48 cents out of every dollar that we spend in taxes that we give to the federal government is now going for health care. And 90% of that is to treat chronic diseases. And, when my uncle was president, we were spending zero on chronic disease. It's bankrupting us. It's destroying the morale of our children and their health and their potential. And, we need to end it. So the way that we're going to do that, you asked about how it happened, and it was partly because the government got captured by the food industry. The FDA got captured, and they let them put anything in food that without any safety testing. So we now have 10,000 chemicals in our food. The Europeans have 400. But I was peripherally involved with the tobacco litigation back in the late 80s. And early 90s, and the tobacco industry was then the most cash-rich industry in the world. They had more money than pharma or big oil. And they saw the writing on the wall. They saw the regulatory headwinds. They saw their customer base was turning against them, and there was litigation on the horizon. So they began investing, diversifying by investing in food companies. And by 1995, the two biggest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris. And they took thousands of scientists who were engaged in making tobacco addictive and more addictive, and they put them to making food addictive and to putting ingredients in our food that hijack our brain, that make us insatiable, that get us addicted, and don't satisfy our hunger. And so we keep putting more and more of it into our mouths. And we now have an obesity crisis where 70% of Americans are now obese or overweight. And it's destroying our country and destroying the American dream.
So when it comes to that obesity rate, and I mean, you talked about the chemicals and the fact that the cigarette companies went from cigarettes and making them addictive and everything they did there, and they moved it over to food. In your opinion, who does that fall on? Is that a policy failure, or is it a mixture of policy failure and personal responsibility, or is it one or the other?
It's, you know what it is, Jake? I wouldn't point to any one person. I would just say it is driven by perverse incentives that make it so that actors in our economy can make more money by keeping people sick than by keeping us healthy. And this is true throughout the entire medical system. Hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, everybody, and even doctors are making more money by keeping us sick. They order tests. They put us on medication. We keep going back to them, and that's how they make money. And we've got to change the system to realign the incentives so that people are paying to get us better rather than getting paid more and getting rich on keeping us sick.
Yeah, and you used to say it a lot on the campaign trail when you would talk to the crowds. You would talk about, we have to find a cure, not just treat. And that's always stuck with me when you say that. And something, it was a few days ago you announced it. And it's funny because we just had a tragedy happen here locally that happened in a high school. And I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I brought up SSRIs and things like Adderall and all of these different pills that were putting children on at a younger and younger and younger age. And you just so happen to talk about how you want to start to taper Americans off of antidepressants and just overmedication in general. When you look at the way that everything is right now with SSRIs or antidepressants, all these different pills, what's the problem you're trying to solve by tapering off the medications?
Well, you talked about cures, but the most important thing we can do is prevention. And, the science is really unclear on SSRIs, but it seems like that they may work for about 20% of the people who are on them. Mm-hmm. But for 80% of the people, they may not work at all or make things worse. And then when you taper from them, you get addicted. And it's not a conventional like a heroin addiction, but the withdrawal is worse. The withdrawal in some cases takes a year. And you go through, serious depression and suicidal ideation, which is on the label. And so it's not people get trapped in it and they cannot get off because it's so painful getting off of them. And we're now ordering the agencies and the industry to develop protocols for deprescribing, for titrating people off in a way that is most likely to result in a good outcome.
When I stopped, so I kind of weaned myself off of Adderall. And it's funny you say that year, because as you said that, I really started thinking about it. And I would say it was about a year that I noticed that there were sometimes that things that I could easily do when I was using Adderall, when I was prescribed it, I should say, it was easier to do it, and it's almost like you just have to, you know how to do it. It's muscle memory. You just have to like kind of reteach yourself how to do it. And basically, the reason why I bring this up is because I want people to know, if they're listening right now, it is possible to do it. Your brain might just work a little bit differently. You might have to write something down extra. You might have to take that extra step to make sure that it gets done, but it can still be done without that medicine.
Yeah, and Adderall, a lot of people get locked into Adderall because they have reading differences and they have processing differences in their brain. But a lot of people can also learn, and I have family members who literally, one of my children literally could not read a page of a book until he was on Adderall, but he didn't like it. He felt like it dulled his senses, and it took away his humanity. Mm-hmm. And he made a big effort to get off it, and now he's got a very high-level job that requires tremendous amounts of reading, and he doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah, So
that works for some people, and I'm not saying that will work for all people because it doesn't. And I think the SSRIs and the benzos are even a more serious problem. And it's 20% of our kids are now medicated.
That's 20% that's an insane statistic. I gotta ask you, because there are different ways that people they're looking into alternative therapies and different treatments, including psychedelics. And I know that there was some I don't want to say controversy, but the media did their spin and they tried to make it seem like it was this crazy thing. But I'll tell you, if there are two people that I trust when it comes to breaking down alternative medicine, it would be Joe Rogan, especially when it comes to psychedelics, and it would be Bobby Kennedy. You've looked into these different things, you've studied these different things. Where do you stand on expanding those at the federal level?
Well, I mean, we've already, we decriminalized psychedelics for research purposes and for certain therapeutic purposes. And the reason for that is that, number one, the top psychiatrists at Harvard, at Stanford, at Yale, were saying this stuff really works for certain people, and that it is the most effective. There's a quote from the chair of the department at Johns Hopkins: the most effective, astonishing effective form of therapy for certain people that I've ever seen in my life. And you had thousands of, particularly of special forces soldiers, vets suffering PTSD and depression, who were going to Mexico to get this, and who knows what they're getting down there. So, we owe them the duty to make sure that if there is a therapy that might work for them, that they can find it available here in the United States and with a high-quality product, with really good protocols, and that's what we're developing now. We're studying at FDA, at the VA, and other parts of my agency to develop protocols for who should get this, who can profit from it, what the doses should be, what the combination should be, and what works and what doesn't work, and then to really do some good science, and then we'll see where we go from there.
That's one of the things I try to explain, because I know this about you, and I don't think a lot of people do, is that you don't just check things once. You have numerous people that cross-reference things, and when you say something, there is studies behind it. There is science, and good science, not just science, but good science behind it. And so that's why when I saw this was heading in that direction, I'm going, oh, okay, they did the research on this. Like, they're really, really going to find things out. And another reason I bring this up, and I want to ask you about this because we're seeing a lot of headlines about it. The Trump administration, they're making a lot of cuts. They want to make sure that there's not wasteful spending. And recently, you've defended a proposed 12% cut to HHS funding. Where were you seeing waste that could be cut and save Americans money?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of ways. In HHS, we're losing $100 billion a year to theft. And, people have said that that the administration is cutting Medicaid, but we're not. Medicaid is actually increasing over the next 10 years by 47%, so that's not a cut. But there were 4.4 million people who were illegally collecting Medicaid, either because they were dead or because they did not qualify because their income was too high and they owned $1 million homes. They were illegal immigrants who were not allowed to get Medicaid, or they were registered for Medicaid and Obamacare, which is illegal. It means if you qualify for Obamacare, you're not qualifying for Medicaid.
Right.
Or they were collecting Medicaid in multiple states. And, we found one person who was registered in 12 states. And so we're cutting those people off the rolls, but that's not cutting it. That is in order to preserve the program for the people that it was designed to serve. And those are, people who are lower income people who can't afford private insurance. And those are the people that we're going to continue to serve. And President Trump wants to protect the program for that group. Hey, Jake, I'm being given a signal. I got another interview.
Okay. All right. Well, Bobby, thank you for your time, and I'll see you at the event tomorrow. Have a good night.
Looking forward to it.
All right. I'll see you then. Thank you. That, of course, Secretary Kennedy making some time, and I know he's busy, and I'm so thankful for his time today. When we come back, we'll talk about this. This is the Jake Underwood Show. We'll be back right after this.